I wanted to promote Marathi. I'm an English speaker. So I designed a game called Culture. It's based on idioms and phrases. It's a mixture of taboo and dumb charades together. You don't use the words, but you use your language skills more and you explain.
A lot of times parents actually also do a lot of harm in comparing right in front of the teacher. Especially open days are very harmful for the children here.
Are there any particular universities or certifications that are sort of the gold standard of certified counselors?
You can correct yourself at any age. Neuroplasticity is such a thing where you can train your brain at any age. You can...
If your child stops sharing their day with you, is it typical behavior or is it a sign of deeper emotional trauma in teenagers?
This is the part 2 of the series. Part 1 is already live on this link right here. If you have watched it, excellent. If you haven't, go check it out and then come back to this video.
Are there any invisible ways in which even well-meaning Indian parents are sort of piling on undue pressure on their kids?
Yes, there are cases where you unintentionally tend to compare with class students, you know. You say, see that child got so many such marks in mathematics, or you say, see this guy's handwriting, or you tend to say that girl plays tennis so well. So unintentionally you end up comparing your child with so many other children, but you have to remember that your child cannot be good at everything, right? Everything that is best in the world. So rather than making such subtle comparisons, it's important to spend time in understanding what your child is good at. A lot of times parents actually also do a lot of harm in comparing right in front of the teacher, right? Especially open days are very harmful for the children here, you know, where you get to see so many children around, and then you also get to see so many different papers, and then you say there and there parents say, see, look at that paper, see what you have done. So I think all well-intentioned, but can cause a lot of harm to the children. Yes.
Are there ways to appreciate good things that other kids have without sounding comparative, just so that your kid also opens up to the good things that their friends can do?
Yeah, I think that would be asking your children what they are looking at.
Okay.
Okay, for example, you like somebody's handwriting.
Right.
And you naturally would want your child to improve in handwriting. And then you demonstrate, see, this is how you're written, I'm finding it a little difficult to read, can we write something better? And then you introduce good handwriting rather than saying this child has good handwriting. Why don't you match his handwriting, right? Introduce good things subtly rather than comparing with others. And especially teenagers find it very difficult to absorb comparisons.
Okay.
That's the short way of getting distance from your children, you know. So please avoid it.
Yes. Absolutely. So why do we call things like empathy, empathy and social skills as soft skills, when they are the sort of hardest things to master and most valuable, and probably one of the very rare skills that you cannot really pay for to gain?
I think because they make you a softer person. I think even that is making me reflect a little bit. But you rightly put it, they're very hard to master. But with all good guidance, putting real intentional effort in gaining those skills, you can really master them.
You work on emotional intelligence, right? But EQ as a concept is a bit of a hard sell in India, considering parents still fundamentally believe that, marks are everything. So are there any tangible ROIs that parents can be sold on when it comes to working towards developing better EQ of their students, their kids?
Yes. So I think the best ROI is you have better children who can understand you, children whom you can talk to, and EQ is picking up. So there are a lot of companies who are not only assessing IQ now, they are also assessing EQ at entrance. So I think that awareness is picking up. EQ is very, very important. People have to work with teams, people have to work with people, right? And they've started, the higher you go, the more it becomes important. So I think the best ROI is people who can have conversation with, you can understand them, and they can understand us. So, and thankfully you have assessments where you can get a score of what is your EQ now.
Right.
So in fact, one of our assessments also tells you are at this emotional quotient. And of course, you can develop it. The best part is that it can be developed. It's not something that you're born with.
Okay.
You can teach yourself emotional intelligence. You can excel it. So the awareness is picking up. And I think as a society, the biggest ROI is better humans.
As you mentioned, EQ is not something that you're born with, and more importantly, it is something you can develop. So,
Yes.
can you give us some exercises so that anyone watching can better their own emotional quotient?
Absolutely. So, for example, each one of us gets angry, right? And we may have episodes of explosions as well. So, if you start writing down why I got angry, what triggered that anger. So, journaling is one of the best exercises where you express yourselves. You try to name what you felt.
Okay.
Bringing in more vocabulary to express your emotions on a daily basis can definitely increase your EQ, because the fact that you're able to label your emotion helps you to understand it better. Understanding your physiological patterns, sometimes when you're very, very angry, you might sweat. When you're very scared, you might shiver. So trying to understand these physiological patterns as well, and then noting it down, registering it, labeling it, definitely helps in improving your emotional quotient.
Okay. So journaling is one thing.
Journaling is one thing, and recording things, even registering things internally. This is how I felt. This is what my body felt. And this is not only about yourself. You can also read people's emotions. For example, I usually, when I'm talking to children, I ask, when you go home, do you notice what is your mother feeling?
Okay.
Do you look into her eyes? Do you look, when your father comes back home, do you look at him and are you able to understand whether he's come tired or how is he feeling? These are small things you can practice at home as a family also, right? Reading each other's physical states, understanding their eyes, what are their eyes telling you, what is their physical, facial expressions telling you. This is what you can practice at home.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Because this way, maybe if you start looking at yourself and looking at your immediate family,
Yes.
this will give you good enough practice to sort of do that in the rest of the world.
Correct. Yes.
You serve students between the ages of 11 and 18, right? So, at what age do you see the most irreversible damage being done to these kids?
I don't think there is irreversible damage at any age.
Okay.
You can correct yourself at any age. Neuroplasticity is such a thing where you can train your brain at any age. You can rewire all your neurons at any age. So, irrespective of what age you are, you can always come back to normal.
That's good to know.
Yes.
So, anyone who is giving the excuse that, oh, I had a bad childhood.
Yeah, मैं ऐसा ही हूँ. No, you can come back.
This is going to be a big problem for a lot of people.
Yes.
So, let's start looking at the importance of extracurricular activities a little bit. So, if your child stops sharing their day with you, is it typical behavior or is it a sign of deeper emotional trauma in teenagers?
Once in a while is fine, okay? Your children, as they grow, they are going to have their secret lives, right? They are going to have their secret crushes, they are going to have some friends. But if it becomes a pattern, where you start sensing that probably they're lying to you, probably they're not opening up completely, then you need to be a little vigilant. But let them be for some time, it's very important to give them that space and freedom. But if it becomes a pattern where they've started lying, they're not sharing everything with you, for months together they have not spoken to you, then you need to be getting, I would say, vigilant. You need to start talking to them. You need to start getting worried.
And how is social media affecting our teens? Like, what trends have you seen in the last 10 years especially?
I think it's doing a lot of damage. Of course, there are a lot of good things. Also, we are learning a lot of skills. There are so many people that we are discovering with such potential, but at the same time, children are absorbing everything,
Okay.
without filtering, without understanding what is good for them, what is bad for them, and how fake it is. Sometimes you read so much on what is shown, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
You are seeing only what is being presented.
Right.
And I think not being able to differentiate it, that is causing a lot of harm to the children. So I think it's very important for children to be aware of what I am looking, whether it's facts or it's just being presented to me.
Name 3 extracurricular activities to choose from that you think every Indian teenager must have at least one of in their life.
I think playing on the ground,
Okay.
okay, going in nature,
Okay.
okay, enjoying nature, appreciating whatever nature is giving us. I think it's very, very important. I would still say sports is very important, team sports especially,
Okay.
because that develops your social skills. It teaches you to take failures, appreciate failures as well, and then rise back. And any other activities, like if you're musically oriented, learn music, learn dance. If you're good at fine arts, you should paint, you should draw. All these 3 things for me are very important, and one of these everyone should definitely do.
All right. So it's playing outside on the
Yes.
ground, going for
out in
nature
nature,
walks,
yes.
and third was
Drawing, painting, sketching, dance.
okay,
Music.
sports and sort of group sports activities.
Yes.
Okay. Team sports. Sorry.
Yes, team sports.
Coming a little on the troubled cases. So suicide among Indian youth represents somewhere around 35% of all suicides in India. That statistic is scary to me.
Yes.
What kind of conversations are Indians failing to have that could actually reduce this number?
I think importance of work rather than the outcome. Expecting quick money, expecting quick fixes, or giving wrong role models to our generation. All this is causing a lot of mental pressure on the children. Sometimes it's generated from the society, it's sometimes generated from the parents, sometimes it's self-created by the children. But I think this is the biggest cause of mental stress, expecting too soon, too much. I think this is the major cause of this statistics that we are seeing, and so sad to see this age group going lower and lower,
Okay.
If we are seeing 5% rise in suicides below 18 age, it's really scary, and as parents, as elders in the society, we have to rise up to this situation and address it quickly.
Is there a particular set of questions that you can ask your kid that can intervene in this kind of a situation, if at all they're on that path?
I think it's not one set of questions. I think it is a daily routine of having conversations with your children. Just one day you sit with a child and ask questions will not work, right? Every day spending time, understanding how they're spending their time, what are the things that they like to do, whom are they talking to, what type of games they are playing. I think understanding overall your child is very, very important. And I don't think it needs a lot of time. It's just probably 15 minutes of your day, but giving that quality time is very important.
Got it. So when a parent says, my child doesn't listen to me, and a teenager says, my parents don't hear me, who is usually right, you have seen?
I think both. Both. You see, this cannot be generic, right? Every family is unique.
Yeah.
Right? Every parent is unique, every child is unique, and it is so situation based, right? Sometimes in the same family, parents can be right, and other days the child can be right. So it has to be contextual. You cannot generalize this. But I would say, since parents are elders, you are more mature, so you should listen more. Maybe you are right that the child is not listening, but take the back step. and try to listen to the child, even if you are right.
Got it. That part I think is sort of missing hugely from Indian parenting overall. That just because you're right does not mean that you get to win.
Yes.
The win is to have the child.
Correct. The win is for love to survive.
Right.
That is the win in the family, right? At the end of the day, if you can still go together, eat together and sleep, have good conversations, that's the win.
Right.
Right? So parents have to start showing maturity when you have growing children around.
Sort of they expect their kids to act their age and then they get angry while they themselves are actually not acting their own age.
Correct.
So, how many times have you seen parents worried saying, my child wants to become a chef or a content creator or a video gamer? And how do you handle these kinds of situations?
Yeah, many times, children come with these fancy ideas, they have these fancy careers in their mind. At times, it's just a fantasy, they are not really aware of what it entails. But sometimes it's a well-researched career by the children also. And parents largely come with worry because they themselves are unaware. So they don't know the child's strengths, they don't know what the career is going to cost them. So they come with a lot of, and they come with, he's asking anything, how can he cook? Okay. And then some parents might even come with, can he become Sanjeev Kapoor or the Khannas of the world? And so I think at this time we have to do a discovery. We have to help them get the assessments done. We have to help them, let's sit and discuss.
Right.
Okay, it cannot be outright rejection of any fancy career that the child gets. We have to understand it first and then decide.
And Indian parents and their comparisons, they absolutely love it, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing of, look at Sharma ji ka beta, he's gotten to IIT. What does this actually do to a brain of a child and their identity by the time they're 16 years of age?
Yeah, so I think this makes them think I'm not enough. This thought that whatever I do, I'm not going to be enough for my parent because I'm always going to be compared to somebody else. I don't come with my own identity, and that is something that parents don't appreciate in me, and that can cause a long-term harm to the child's psyche. I think we spoke about this comparison earlier also. We should be better off comparing with others, and there are many other different ways of introducing good things to the children. But by the age of 16, if the child might really feel neglected, he might feel he doesn't deserve being where he is. So comparison really causes a lot of harm to the child.
And on a lighter note, have you ever heard a child fight back and say, look at Sharma uncle also,
yes.
he's doing all of this for
So
their family and
this
everything.
generation is a sandwich generation, right? We are equally scared of the children like we were scared of our parents. So this generation has started talking back. Okay, you're telling me the example of Sharma. Do you look at Verma? What the Verma is doing for his children? Yeah, yes.
So our parents dealing with this, is it making things worse or is it really helping them stop and reflect?
Some parents do stop and reflect, but then we have depression and anxiety in parents as well, right? So there are a lot of anxious parents around who are needing help nowadays, yes.
So this generation of parents has, famously grown up in an environment where a lot of study pressure is what brought the outcomes for them.
Correct.
Right? Now, they are inevitably doing the same thing to their kids. Probably because they saw that is the way it works and it works well. But is there a way for them to break this cycle right now?
Thankfully, the schools are also opening up. There are a lot of careers that are showing up where the children can try different things. I think parents need to take examples of this, introduce your children to different activities, and take examples of our own school days. Try to remember the backbenchers, right? If you were the person who were probably the top 5, where you are and where the backbenchers are, So people who have been experimental in their lives when they were growing up, probably they are the most successful people nowadays, right?
Right.
So I think those are the examples parents have to take and see marks is not everything.
Right.
What is the potential of the child? How much risk ability that the child has? How much is he learning from around the society? You know, that is what is going to help him be successful in life.
Now, in all of these situations, like you said, like, you know, how the kid is handling risks and how the kid is dealing with society, you have these, you know, hyper intelligent kids who sort of sometimes tend to stray away from the right path. And sometimes they become rudderless. So, how do you deal with these kinds of hyper intelligent kids?
So these are the kids who are good at so many things, you know, and these are the most confused children because they are good at so many things, and it's very difficult for them to choose one path and stick to that. Okay, and this is where I think guiding them, counseling them becomes very, very important, and help them stay focused on one path.
Okay.
Okay, and that's where we counsel them. We typically try to give them plan A, plan B, give them some hobby paths, and because they're intelligent, they can do multiple things many times. So we ask them to get into internships, also ask them to try out different things, and that helps them to identify what they're really interested in and what they're good at, and then choose the path from that.
Right. And you know, speaking of these kinds of troubled children, sometimes there are troubled parents also, right?
Yes.
Have you sat across a family, looked at how sort of bad the situations is and how deeply rooted the parents are in their own opinions and their own angles? Have you ever had the feeling that, boss, I cannot help this family?
There are occasions like this. In some cases, I've taken one-on-one sessions with the parents later on to help them understand, and they have understood that probably they are causing harm to their children. Being a life coach helps me to take those conversations further with the parents. But in some cases, there's so much rigidity in the parents. You know, they're just not ready to stray from their thoughts, from their opinions. In front of our eyes, we can see the cause they're causing to their children. We try to have conversation, but if we cannot help beyond a point, we cannot do much. We have to let it go.
Sadly enough.
Yes.
If you could make one thing illegal in Indian parenting, what would it be?
Spanking the children.
Okay.
Especially the younger ones. Once in a while, I think giving a pat on the back when the children are grown up is fine. But hitting children, especially when you are so strong and the child is so small, and that might hit him so hard, it might end up causing injury. It might cause so much harm that the brain gets affected, you know. So I think hitting children, especially toddlers, especially children below 10 years, it should be illegal to even touch them.
Even for teenagers, right? I mean, parents hit kids because they are sort of young and feeble, but they forget that after they're done being teenagers, the kids are actually going to reach their physical peak, and you are going to fall from your own physical peak. So you don't want the kids to remember how you treated them when you were strong.
And see, hitting actually harms their respect, their identity. And I've seen so many children saying, yeah, because I'm not earning, that's the reason parents have the right to hit me.
Oh.
Okay, and it gets to that level where once I start making money, dare you touch me?
Right.
So these are the levels where those thoughts, and this is not a relationship,
Correct.
right? This is not a parent-child relationship. So I think I'm guilty of that myself. When my kids were younger, I have hit them. But if I was aware of all these psychological effects that it has on the children's brain and mind, probably I would have never done that. And I think the system should not allow it.
If a parent is watching this, they used to hit their kids till today, and they want to change themselves, what is the first thing that they should do in terms of addressing this with their child?
I think first thing, again, even I was a child. The first thing they should tell themselves is, even I was a child, even I was this age. What was I doing in that age? If they start reminding themselves about what I was in that age, that will help them to regulate their emotion. That will help them to get control of whatever they're expecting from their child, in effect, the hitting part or the anger part will get constricted. Reminding themselves of their times will definitely help.
If a parent wants to sort of change things, is opening up with an apology to the child, is that something that they should consider? Does that happen in India? Should it happen in India? Is it right, wrong?
Apology with the right intention definitely helps. If it becomes a habit, you do the wrong thing and you go back and say, oh, sorry, it doesn't help, right? But yes, if you show the child that I am also human, I can also make mistakes and I'm really sorry for that. And at the same time, you're also human and you can make mistakes and we both can correct ourselves. It has to be on equal footing. If you always maintain that equal footing, that as humans, we are equal.
Yeah.
As humans, we both are growing.
We both have value.
We both have value. Then it works.
Right.
Okay. And then opening up with an apology for whatever wrong you did will help.
Have you ever seen an Indian parent apologize by themselves?
Yes, I've done that
To
myself.
their kids?
I've done that myself.
Except for you, because you are counted as an exception.
Yes, parents do. See, we cannot forget in all these aspects, we throw all the empathy towards the children.
Right.
Okay, like I said, even parents are evolving.
Yeah.
Parents are growing. They have their own set of troubles,
Yeah.
own set of challenges. Okay, not all parents are doing everything wrong intentionally with their children.
Right.
Correct. So, and once they realize, once they understand what their children are going through, I've seen a lot of genuine apologies, genuine understanding going in the families. Yes.
That's good. I'm sure it is rare, but it
It's
must
not
be.
rare, Kshitij. It
It's
is not
not?
rare. No. It's getting. I wouldn't say it's getting common. It's very common. I've seen parents apologizing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lovely. Maybe I haven't seen it. at all.
No. Everything is not so scary and gloomy. Okay.
Okay, so can you talk to us about the importance of multilingual skills for teenagers?
We have a multilingual expert here. So I'll let her take
So
it.
for teenagers specifically, I wouldn't say, but Indians are multilingual anyway because all the Indians know 3 languages:
Right.
the state language, national language, and your mother tongue.
Right.
And we see the benefits of it. So I think it helps your brain work faster. It gives you an edge over others. So we compare Indians and Chinese all over the world, how we have gone ahead in getting the jobs at such high positions. It's because of being able to learn new languages at a very fast pace compared to other language speakers as well. And being flexible. So for it helps a lot of cognitive thinking, behavioral changes also for multilingual speakers. So it helps quite a lot.
So, are there any special benefits of early exposure to multiple languages and brain plasticity in younger kids compared to later stage, doing the same thing in a later stage in your life?
Only thing being is that until the 12 years, it's called the critical period in linguistics. So scientifically also, until 12 years, it's called a critical period to acquire languages.
Okay.
So you can, I'm not very sure, and I wouldn't promote learning many languages at a time, because it really hampers with your learning skills, because how much can you remember?
Right.
One thing about learning language is grammar and the other is vocabulary.
Okay.
Right, so in vocab is actually memorization.
Right.
How much can you even remember?
Correct.
But in grammar comes the sentence structure, in it comes the phonetics. So if you acquire all these insights about the language at an early age, you will remember. For example, let's say in German there is an umlaut.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a U sound.
Yeah.
So if you learn it at a younger age, you will remember it lifelong.
Right.
But the same sound is very difficult for you to learn after you're an adult.
Right.
The same thing. So these acquisitions come at an early age. Later, it just takes a lot of time to learn or acquire.
Got it.
So if you want to introduce new languages, introduce them in a way of culture, through culture, or what people are like, or what they speak, or what it is called. Some words saying hello, hi in many languages. It's just understanding new languages, but learning them at depth. We already know 3 languages. Do you want to bombard them more? It's a choice.
But let's say we are talking about specific foreign languages. Is there an ideal age where that should be done?
So, if you want to learn, if you're living there and if you have a need for it, of course you should learn it by the time you're 12. You start learning at an early age. But if you don't need it, or if you think it's important, then maybe you should just introduce it basic, absolute basics. My name is, how old are you? Say hello, hi, bye. Expressing in that language will not come very early also, because then it is a lot of bombardment. Eventually, so if let's say as an adult, with the insights that I have, I would take about 3 years to learn specific levels of language. But as a kid, it might take you about 6 years, because of course the acquisition capacity is also limited at that age.
Right.
So I think until 12 years, just introduce the basics of the language, and then later if you see development, then you can start with full-fledged learning.
Got it. And for these kinds of activities, are apps like Duolingo helpful, or are they just a bit of entertainment and games and not really useful?
I think Duolingo and all the Babbel, all these apps are quite helpful to get started, or just develop, or see if you're motivated to learn new languages, because the apps are built in a way that they play with your mindset. You've done a good job. They remember. It's a memory game after all.
Right.
You don't learn grammatically as much, the sentence structure, but yeah, to learn and to get started and to judge your linguistic capacity, I think they're very, very good.
Okay. So you don't mind if you want to see if your child is particularly interested, you can start that as a trial, see how they're responding.
Yeah, absolutely. You could just start as a trial.
How can learning foreign languages help in boosting your career?
So specifically, if you see, everybody in today's world, we are filled with linguistic pride. Everybody is doing that. Germans will accept you more if you learn German. French people will, treat you well if you speak their language, very, very welcoming. Mandarin, you have to know Mandarin to go to China and work there, because the language is completely different. They can hardly accommodate with English.
Right.
So if you know that language, it is always an edge over others. So I mean, it really helps you with jobs. It gives you an edge over others for sure.
And are multilingual kids better at coping with the realities of life just because of the way languages have shaped their brains?
I'm not sure about the realities of life. I don't know how you would define that, realities of life, but I think multilingual kids are very flexible. They're very open to new people, new thoughts, new aspects, where, for example, we think in right, left, Mandarin people think in northeast, southwest, go there. So that also changes your thought perspective. So all these things, we are very acceptable. We are very flexible as human beings if we are multilingual, is what I think. We can adapt to change really well, and we don't, I think, less judgmental as well.
Are there sort of any additional tools to help kids understand language? Any, like even just Hindi, Marathi, English? Are there any other tools or games that kids can sort of play with and grow with without feeling that they are being taught something?
So now there are new ways of learning languages which people are introducing to keep the children interested in languages. That's the playway method. That's the new thing come in, which is really helpful. So we have flashcards, we have playway, physical games combined with language learning. So if you're trying to teach them some grammatical aspects, you have to jump when they actually say something. That really enhances learning. So similarly, I've also designed one game. I wanted to promote Marathi. I'm an English speaker. So I designed a game called Culture. It's based on idioms and phrases.
Okay.
So now it is available in Hindi, English and Marathi. So it started with actually working in Marathi. So do you know the Mhani in English? For example,
sayings.
Sayings, Kakhet Karsa, Gavala Varsa, Ati Tithe Mati, all these things. So the card game is like, it's a game. So you have to explain the game or explain that idiom by telling a situation.
Okay.
Right?
And then I guess what idiom you're talking about.
So it's a mixture of taboo and dumb charades together. You don't use the words, but you use your language skills more and you explain. So it's fun. and the way everybody explains the situation depends on their own personal experiences. So it is always a new way to identify or guess that idiom and saying.
That's great. So it's more like learning more about the languages that you're already acquainted with.
Yeah.
Just sort of get into better depths and.
Right, and along with the culture, that's why it's called culture. So
Got
in
it.
the idioms and sayings, lots of culture is built in it. In one sentence, you can say so many things. It could be a taunt, it could be love, it could be anything.
True.
So many things in
So
one
get the
thing.
intricacies of languages,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Go a layer deeper.
Yes.
Excellent. So here's something I wanted to sort of take an honest take on, right? So is career counseling in India at least mostly a business that sort of preys on the parents' anxiety, or is it genuinely changing lives?
It is genuinely changing lives, and like any professor or any business, there are people who want to mint money out of that field, right? So you will have some people who are not qualified or who are actually capturing the fear factor of parents. So there are such people around, but there are a lot of genuine counselors around who are helping people find right career paths, helping parents. And I think genuine counselors are really changing lives, making an impact in the society.
If you could tell me 2 or 3 signs, okay, to spot bad counselors, what would they be?
One is their knowledge.
Okay.
Counselors are uncertified.
Okay.
They may not have the right experience. So if you're trying to find the right counselor, you should look for their certifications, their own journey, how they have conducted themselves. Check for reviews, check for their testimonials, talk to some parents who have already taken counseling from those counselors. And in general, before you sign up, have a conversation with the counselor, and that if that gives you a good feeling that yes, my child will be in the right hands, then go ahead.
Are there any particular universities or certifications that are sort of the gold standard of certified counselors or career guidance?
Unfortunately, no. There are a lot of certifications floating around, autonomous certifications. There is a need for a regulatory system where we have national level certified counselors, and I think that's coming up shortly. But as of now, it's a very mixed industry. You know, I think it's in its nascent stages. There are a lot of genuine people getting into the system, and there are a lot of opportunistic people getting in. But some regulation in this industry will definitely help.
Absolutely. Yes. Because it's very easy to find a doctor, lawyer, a lawyer has cleared the bar, a doctor has cleared their exams.
Correct.
Their degrees are pretty transparent, certificates are there. This helps people with sort of getting rid of the trust factor.
Yes.
Right. So I think the regulation should help.
Yes.
Is it there on an international level but not in India, or is it not there internationally?
No, it's not there in the international level also. So some countries do have their own regulatory frameworks. For example, US does have, unless you are a certified counselor, you cannot get into a school.
Right.
In our schools, if you have a master's in psychology degree, then you can get into a school as a counselor, but there is no regulatory counseling entity board, right? But eventually it's coming because now it's getting mandatory for all schools to hire counselors.
Excellent.
So it's going to happen.
How can a parent know if their teenage kid needs a simple guidance or counseling or a psychologist's help or a psychiatric help? Like, what is the difference between these 4 things?
So career guidance is where you're trying to figure out what is the long-term career that can fit my child's aptitudes, his motivation to work, all those parameters, his personality, right? And that's where the counselor can tell, okay, let's take his assessment, let's figure out the strengths and map it to what careers can fit, and it stops there.
Yeah.
But when it goes into counseling, where the child is very confused, is lonely, then he needs somebody to talk to. It's not necessarily to do with the career decision.
Okay.
It's more to do with help needed in getting him back to normal life.
Okay.
Where he's probably stuck in some trouble. So that is where you will need counseling. And sometimes it can be where the child has probably crossed the boundaries of even getting help from a counselor.
Okay.
He's gone into overthinking complexes, is just not talking to people, his social skills have completely gone down. And that are the cases where probably a therapy will help.
Okay.
Okay, sometimes parents can identify this by themselves, but if not, they should visit a counselor
Okay.
and let the counselor decide whether the child needs counseling, whether the child needs therapy, or even rehabilitation sometimes in some cases.
So Daniel Goleman says that we have a mind that thinks and a mind that feels. How can parents help their teenage kids use this combination to their benefit?
Yeah, so basically there is a very important concept of pause and reflect.
Okay.
Okay, so when you're into emotions, you cannot think because you're so engrossed with that emotion. If you feed it with thoughts, it's going to grow. Okay, and that's where your thinking mind stops.
Okay.
So probably analytical mind stops. And the moment you stop feeding your emotion, you're able to analyze those emotions, stop them, or act on them. So pause and reflect
Okay.
is a very important exercise where you can switch between the thinking mind and the analytical mind.
Okay.
Rather than getting into these jargons, I would only tell parents to experiment this themselves.
Right.
Whenever they are high on emotion, just sit down, pause a little bit, take deep breaths,
Yeah.
and activate their analytical mind. And the same thing they can teach their children as well.
Right. So this is something that the parents should do themselves first a little bit, so they can pass it on to their
Absolutely. I think this applies to everything, I know parents cannot be role model for everything in life. But when we want our children to do something, we have to practice it ourselves first so that you yourself are convinced that it works and then tell your children to do it.
True. So you must have coached kids, who felt that they don't belong in elite institutes once they get there. How should these students deal with the feeling of alienation?
I think the first thing the children have to tell them that I'm equal in everything.
Okay.
Okay, I am unique. I come with my own strengths and weaknesses, but at the same time, I belong to this world.
All right.
Right? The moment you belong to this world, you belong to everywhere. Okay, and you build your confidence that way. You treat yourself as a deserving person. And what is an elitist institute, right? If it doesn't have the right skill and right talent.
Right.
So telling yourself that I deserve to be here is the first step.
Got it.
And then you will belong.
You use the GROW model, right? Goal, reality, options, and way forward.
Yes.
Can you teach our parents in the audience to use this framework to resolve conflicts with their kids without it ending into like a shouting match?
Sure. So many times what happens is when you're in this situation where you're arguing, you're fighting, you tend to get into the past.
Okay.
You always tend to dig into what mistakes the other person did, and you try to dig into the patterns that we have seen. Rather than that, if you sit together and say, how can we correct this?
Okay.
How can we grow from here?
Okay.
How can we look into the future rather than looking into the past? So this is what the GROW model is, okay? Instead of looking at the past, how can we make the future better?
Okay.
And in steps. We can probably have small goals, achieve those, and then go forward from there. So the GROW model is about finding small opportunities, make them your goals, and look into the future.
So you use the GROW model, right? So goal, reality, options, way forward, etc. Can you teach our parents in the audience to use this framework to resolve conflicts with their kids without it becoming like a shouting match at home?
Yeah, so the GROW model is basically goal. So in this case, for example, you want to have a good relationship with your parent. This is the goal.
Okay.
Okay. Reality is, can you have it?
Okay.
Are you in a situation where you can really have this? It is a realistic, basically. If it is, then you go and draw some plans around that. Yes, I can sit with my parent daily. Parent can write down, I can probably spend 5 times with my child, and we can talk about our troubled situations, wherever we had differences, register it, explain it, talk to each other. So that is the realistic situation. And then, of course, it is opportunity. Would you get such opportunities? For example, the parents are not meeting. For example, there could be situations where they don't get time together, but find those opportunities.
Okay.
Okay, and then from there it is a way forward. So you address those issues and then you move on from there. Achieve that one single goal and go. Have smaller goals, achieve them, and take your way forward. This same grow model can be applied to any aspect of your life. We usually use this for career coaching. Grow model is extensively used in my life coaching sessions with my clients.
Okay. So there, how does the context fit?
The context fits like, for example, somebody is taking a coaching from me for, say, getting a promotion.
Okay.
That is the goal.
Okay.
And then if you want the promotion, what are the skill gaps that you want to fill in? What are the performance achievements that you want to achieve in that time frame? So those are the realistic scenarios. So you have a action plan for that. And then what are the opportunities you'll find to apply those skills? And then from there, what is the way forward? Whom will you talk to? How will you make it visible? So this is the grow plan we'll apply for. This is the one example of one client where he wanted a, say, promotion. So this is the way to apply it to different aspects.
Walk me through what actually happens in a psychometric assessment session at YAN specifically. And like, what does a teenager experience, not from a technical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint?
I would say, if I have to give one word for this session, is confidence boosting.
Okay.
Okay, so we start with discovery. Okay, when a student takes a psychometric assessment, there are so many things they discover about themselves. So there is a lot of validation that happens because the assessment is a tool.
Okay.
It's an input for us, right? And then there is a lot of validation exercise that happens. Some things that children may agree with, sometimes we give examples, they'll come up with examples how those aptitudes are validated. So I think first exercise is decoding, second discovery, second is decoding those results.
Okay.
And once we have decoded, validated that, then there is a lot, the input that goes in, giving them interpretation of that reports.
Okay.
And then giving direction. So based on what we have decoded collectively, this is the direction we give you. So at the end, we do see a lot of parents getting that content, oh, we are in good hands. We know now what is happening. The children feeling very, very confident to take that career path forward.
Got it. And how is this different from a standard aptitude test? Or is it the same, or is it like a subset?
So there are various aptitudes that people refer to, okay, based on whatever they want to refer to. But there are a lot of free tools available which come with their own limitations. They are not validated. I'm not confident of using them. The tools that you use have to be scientifically validated, have to be tested on a large volume of children before you, children or population before you can rely on them. What happens is you should not stop at the reports.
Okay.
I think career guidance starts with the reports. There is so much after the reports, A lot of people around, they'll say, take this assessment, this is the report tells you, and this is what it is. Right? I think this is where it actually starts. You interpret the reports, you sit with the children, understand, validate it, and then from there you take the direction forward.
Right. We spoke about EQ being pretty important, right? So how does YAN come into the picture when our education system doesn't really cover for EQ? So how do you guys help in that?
So we do have a lot of online and offline emotional intelligence workshops.
Okay.
Where we spend anywhere between 4 to 8 hours with children in the workshops, helping them understand their emotions, experience those. If it is experiential, we help them experience those emotions, help them record those, register these emotions, and then of course use that awareness to apply those emotional understanding for themselves, control their emotions, and then also apply that understanding to others' emotions. Help them understand that you can control your emotions but not control others' emotions. You can only manage others' emotions, right? And in effect, this eventually helps them in conflict resolution, helps them in communication skills, in body language, because each of us bodies shows what emotions we are going through, right?
It's not really in your control a lot of the time.
It's not in your control, correct? So people, our children who have taken these workshops are able to read others' emotions. They're able to manage them, read through the emotions. So we help children from even starting from age 11. So last workshop we took, it was for 11, 12-year-olds. Now we are coming up for 15 to 17-year-olds. I have taken these workshops for 70-plus-year-olds, senior citizens. So I think emotional intelligence awareness is applicable to all age groups, but we are most active in the teenage sector, and through these workshops we are helping them.
So you mentioned that you are doing these sessions for 70 years old as well as 17-year-olds. Are there any commonalities that you have seen?
Emotion is universal, okay? Everyone goes through fear, irrespective of your age, okay? For example, a young child may be very scared of going to school. A 70-year-old may be scared of falling, of a fall from a chair, okay, or being alone at home. So the fear is very, very common, and it is universal. The way you see it could be different. The way you handle it could be different. The way it has to be managed can be different. So when we take these sessions for such different groups, the way we talk about emotions will be different, but the emotions are the same.
Okay.
Right.
So having a presence in multiple countries like India, UAE, US, what can Indian parents learn from the American exploration model, and what can American parents learn from India's focus model of learning and teaching kids?
So in our Indian parents, we don't focus on allowing the children spend time in hobbies or voluntary work, which I've seen a lot of US students get into voluntary work, building their profile, making their profile stronger, so that they can probably choose more from the careers. You
Right.
know? And of course, we spend a lot of time in the foundation. Our Indian students have very strong mathematical basis, language basics, and that is what I think the US children can learn from our focused efforts in the early childhood.
Got it. So Indian parents need to be a little more diverse, give their kids more diverse experiences.
Yes.
So you use psychometric assessments based on the MBTI and Holland's theory.
Yes.
How do you distinguish Jan's scientific clarity from hundreds of the free personality quizzes that are available online?
Yeah, like I said, the free personality reports that are available come with their own limitations. We don't know their validation. We don't know on what population it has been tested, how accurate they are. Whereas the ones that I use come from an authentic source. They have been tested on lakhs of population and comes with a lot of scientific research. There are a lot of papers around it. A lot of results that are published around those assessments. So yes, they are validated assessments.
Okay. With all of this, what is, with the advent of AI and LLMs growing so much, what is stopping me or any other teenager kid or their parents from going on ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and asking these LLMs to give their kids psychometric analysis or aptitude tests?
So one thing is data privacy. you're sending your child's data into a server which is going to stay there forever. And we know these corporate companies are so data hungry that they're going to utilize this data, so it's not safe, first thing. And second thing is, any guidance as such doesn't stop at only giving you assessments. It starts with assessments. So a counselor sitting with you, reading your expressions, reading your eyes, asking you how you are feeling now, okay, and reading your bodily language, that's the true assessment that is happening. ChatGPT is not human to read through you, right? And this is where the counselors bring value.
Got it.
Understanding your child right through the feelings, and then reading, interpreting the assessments correctly, and then giving you the right direction.
All right. So the humanitarian side of things.
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. Smita, it was such an amazing conversation. Ankita, it was lovely to have you. And before we sign off, is there anything you want to say to the kids watching, the parents watching, the grandparents watching, friends of parents with kids or whatever, anything? The floor is yours.
Yes, I would say we are getting lonelier, we are getting materialistic, we are losing touch with our people around, but it's not so gloomy. There is help around. There are people who are ready to help you. So let's get back to our social skills. Let's get back to our understanding our emotions. Let's connect back with people and seek the right guidance from the right people.
Absolutely. And I really hope the stigma around seeking mental help, career help, guidance help doesn't really stop us as Indians from getting the best that we can out of our own lives.
In fact, that's the best thing you can do for your children, right? Getting the right
100%.
help at the right time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for coming. And we have all the links in the description for their own websites. We also have added the link to Ankita's games, Cultured, where you can sort of learn how to play with language and get into the depths of idioms, phrases, and the way you can communicate with people. And thank you so much for giving all the time for this podcast. I hope you have learned something, and we are looking forward to see you again in the next episode. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Kshitij. It was wonderful having this conversation with you.
Same, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.